All right, let's get you guys ready for some Mets action on the second half of the season with our very own Dan Martin. He's got his second half season preview for you guys. Dan, thanks for hopping on with us. I know you got to get over to Citi Field in a bit. Let's start with Sean Manaea. My man's back on the mound at Citi Field for the first time since Game 3 of the 2024 NLDS. What's your expectations on Manaea's first outing back from injury, and how big is it for the Mets to get him right back after the break?
Well, we got a preview of it, right before the break. He came in out of the bullpen, pitched 3 good innings. They were very encouraged by that. But to have him back in the rotation, they've missed him for that first half. He was such an integral part of last year's rotation. So he's part of a bigger improvement that they figure to have in the second half, because their pitching rotation was just completely decimated in the first few months, with Manaea being down, Frankie Montas being down. Those two guys were a big part of their offseason, bringing those guys in as free agents, or in Manaea's case, bringing him back as a free agent. So they were encouraged by what they saw the other day. But to have him every 5-6 days now, if he can replicate what he did last year, that's a huge boost for them and a huge boost for the rotation that's already gone through a lot of injuries. And Kodai Senga's kind of up and down with his health. So they really need Sean to kind of do what he did last year, and most importantly, to stay healthy.
I wonder, him coming back healthy, does that change what they do at the trade deadline? Because that's right around the corner. So what positions do you think that David Stearns tries to go after at the deadline?
I think starting pitching is still a consideration, just because they lost Griffin Canning. Like I said, Kodai Senga, you're always holding your breath when he's on the mound. So that's a possibility. But what they really need help is in the bullpen, because, AJ Minter's out for the year. Basically, Edwin Diaz has been the only reliable arm all year, and that's great from the closer spot, but they need to get to him. So I would expect them to add at least an arm or two there. And then you've got center field, which has been a mess the whole season since Jose Siri, who they brought in. They thought he was going to be an answer there, but he's been out with a leg injury all year long, and they've just gotten no offense from that position. And third base could be another spot where they look to upgrade, because Mark Vientos and Brett Beatty, they haven't really found their footing there. So there's a lot of work for David Stearns to do, but the Mets are in pretty good shape, half a game behind the Phillies for first place in the NL East going into the second half. They'll take that. But, if they want to get as far as they did last year in the playoffs, there are some upgrades that need to be made.
My guy Francisco Alvarez has been tearing up in AAA since the Mets demoted him. Do you think that he gets called up soon? And would calling him up, I guess, add value to the team at this point of the season?
Well, they certainly hope so, because catching is a mess right now. They got Luis Torrens last year from the Yankees, and he was a pleasant surprise, but he's proven to be a backup catcher. If you play him every day, the offense just isn't there. His whole body of work kind of goes down. They have a lot of faith in Francisco Alvarez. They placed a lot of importance on him. They thought he was going to be a major part of their future when he hit 20-something home runs as a rookie. He's taken steps back each of the last 2 years, both offensively and defensively. So they've been impressed by what he's done in the couple of weeks that he's been at AAA Syracuse. But he's going to have to translate that to the major league level whenever that does come. I would expect it to be soon, because, like you said, he is playing well down there. The AAA coaching staff has liked what they've seen. Carlos Mendoza said he's been very impressed. So I would expect Alvarez back in Queens any day now. Which is fine, but they have to have him hit like Francisco Alvarez and not the guy like the last year and a half, which has been very disappointing.
Yeah, he's entertaining to watch, too. One of my favorite players on the team. So final thoughts on the Mets going into the second half of the season, Dan?
It was a crazy first half, up and down. For the first couple of months of the season, they looked like the best team in baseball. And then they flipped a switch and they couldn't get out of their own way. So now they find themselves in the second half in a pretty good spot. They're right behind the Phillies. Their rotation is getting healthier. They've got the assets to make some trades if they want to upgrade the roster before July 31st. They've got the core of the team from last year that overcame a lot of the same issues and made the playoffs and got to the NLCS. So they've got a winning pedigree. So I think they're pretty pleased with where they are. The next 10 days, though, are going to be very vital with what David Stearns does to tweak the roster and maybe make even bigger moves than that. But, I think most teams would like to be where the Mets are right now.
Dan, Saturday is Wright Day at Citi Field. David Wright spent all 14 of his MLB seasons with the Mets, as you know. There are a lot of great moments, but a lot of injuries kind of set his greatness back as well. So how do you remember David Wright's time in Flushing?
I think that sums it up pretty well. The great play mixed in with the injuries that just kind of messed up his whole career. Billy Wagner, his former teammate, is going into the Hall of Fame next week. He just said today he thought if Wright didn't get hurt, he might have been going into the Hall of Fame himself. And I know a lot of people have the same belief in that when David Wright was healthy, he was as good as anybody. And, he was really the face of the franchise for probably the better part of a decade. And a lot of those times the baseball wasn't great in Queens. Not his fault, but he was always accountable. He made sure other people were accountable. So he's a very popular player with the fans, hugely popular teammate. So I think, even though he didn't win a World Series, he got there against Kansas City. They came up short. That was really important to him. But when you look back at that era of the Mets, I think he really embodies it. And, he's very worthy of this honor. And I know he appreciates it. And, it'll be interesting to see. He's so far the last captain that they've had. There's been talk that Francisco Lindor may be the next one. But he wore that captaincy very well when he was in Queens.
Enjoy your weekend, man.
Thanks, Brandon.